All right, my friends, with housing prices and interest rates still top of mind for so many families, the question becomes, how do you make home ownership more affordable without giving up your goals? So today we are talking with real estate agent Alana Grant, who's sharing practical tips to help make buyers make smart moves toward owning a home. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. All right. So we're going to get into our real estate real
right.
talk with Alana. All right. So there are a couple of tips that you'd shared with me about how people can make sure that they are on the right track to home affordability, because the biggest thing that I'm seeing before we dive into those tips is that we see a lot of people count themselves out of the home buying process because they just feel like it's an American dream that is unreachable for them.
Mm-hmm. No, that is very true. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to prospective clients, we're talking about three different things. We're talking about timing, we're talking about budgeting, and we're talking about, making the actual decision. And so regarding timing, my best advice is for people to make a decision on when to buy, not based off of what's going on in the market, but based off of what's going on in their home. The market, if anything, now we can say is officially unpredictable. And I use myself as an example when I'm talking to them. When I was 25, I bought my first home. Yes, the interest rates were higher. No, the prices weren't low. No, it wasn't the ideal market, I would say, to buy a home in. But if I would have waited 10 years till I was married and had a more established income, et cetera, and the interest rates were lower, I would have paid twice for the house of what I paid when I was 25.
Okay.
And so I tell people the timing of your life is way more valuable in the decision than the timing of the market, because we can't predict the future. We can only see the present and look at the past. And so that's one thing that I would encourage buyers to consider.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting is because all the time when we are hearing the real estate conversation, everybody's like, I'm waiting on the market to do X, Y, and Z. However, as you just said, we see that the market's going to do what the market's going to do, right?
Yes.
And so you really could be holding off on purchasing or getting that American dream, and it not be the best time ever because you've waited. You're just making the timing situation worse. So I love that you said, check in with where you're at in life.
Yes, that's way more important because, a lot of people are like, I'm waiting on the market to crash. And I'm so glad that that is not trending anymore because, yes, 2008, the market crashed and it crashed heavy. But since then, the banks and the mortgage lenders have done so much to make sure that that doesn't happen again. If you have ever applied for a mortgage post 2008, I tell my clients be prepared to submit everything short of a blood sample financially to the bank because they are going to verify again that you are not only qualified to buy a home, but that you're the type of person to where if you fall on hard times, you'll still figure out how to pay your mortgage legally. And so they make sure of that before they hand you over a loan. And so I tell people, I don't know about another market crash. Even though the market conditions may change, don't anticipate a crash.
Okay, that's so good to know. And that's why I love the real talk about real estate because you hear stuff like that on social media and it's giving people not the greatest advice and making home ownership something that really is unreachable when it actually can be reachable when you have the appropriate tools. All right, Alana, lay on us the second tip.
All right, the second one is about budgeting. And we hate that word because inflation has inflated. People earn their money hard. They want to spend it the way they want to. But honestly, when we talk about budgeting, I look at it from two aspects. The first aspect is like truth. How truthful are you being with yourself? I cannot tell you how many millennials specifically I have talked to that said, I can't afford a down payment. And so what I do is I say, okay, that could be true for a lot of people. But for some of them, I say, print out your bank statements from the last 3 months, highlight everything that is eating out, shopping, or traveling. Every expense that you have that you don't necessarily have to have, and come back and tell me whether or not you have traveled away your down payment or you're wearing your down payment or you ate your down payment. And a lot of times they'll come back and say, I think you're right. I think I do have a down payment in 90 days if I just buckle down on not spending things that I don't necessarily need to spend. And so that's the one thing, is being truthful about yourself. But then the other thing is when you're talking about budgeting, making considerations for maintenance and mortgage. So a lot of folks will say, okay, this is the payment, but they don't necessarily consider the escrow, like the taxes, the insurance, in some cases the HOAs, and that taxes, insurance, and HOAs will follow you after you've paid off your mortgage. The size of the home. Do you have enough money to maintain, this roof or this HVAC? And how are you saving while you are still owning the home? And so those are things that I tell people to consider when they're talking about buying or selling, because budgeting is important.
Absolutely. And I love that you talked about the fact it's not just about the money to have to purchase the home, but the money you're going to need to maintain the home. Because how many times have we heard stuff about somebody buying a home and then they're like, oh no, my AC went out,
Yes.
or oh no, a storm came through and part of my siding came out. And so I love that you have talked about the fact that we definitely have to budget that in. And then just budgeting in general, even if you're not buying a house, you're just trying to buy something in general. I love what you said about go through your bank statements and figure out what are your wants versus what are your needs. Because I know for me, I had to stop eating out so much, girl.
Yeah.
It was eating up eating up my money. Literally, my mom is the one who was like, why don't you sit down and look at that? And so even if, buying a home is going to be something you do later this year, that is such great life advice. Sit down and figure out the wants between the needs. All right, finally, the last tip, something that we are doing right now, talk to an expert.
Talk to an expert. And this kind of goes back to the first tip. So remember when we were talking about social media and, just social media. I love social media. I use it as a platform. I'm on social media giving advice. However, realtors specifically give broad advice on the internet because you're trying to reach a broad audience. And so when you want advice about what's best for you, you need to talk individually to an agent, one whom you consider an expert, because the advice that we give on the internet or just in general might be good for, some people,
Right.
but it won't be good for everyone. That's why in my almost 12 years of experience, I've never had two transactions that were exactly the same.
Wow.
Every single one is different because everybody has a different life, everybody has different wants and needs, and everybody has a different financial profile. And so I always recommend just talk to the expert, DM them, email, contact, call, smoke signal, whatever it is you got to do, talk to an expert and really try to relax and be truthful when you're talking to them. A lot of times, and it's not just realtors, lenders have this same kind of thing going on where folks are scared to talk to them. It's like going to the principal's office, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to kind of get an assessment of where you are and see how they can help you get to where you want to go.
Absolutely. And I think that transparency is absolutely critical because your agent can better help you. Your lender can better help you if you tell them up front, this is what's going on. So and as you can see, Alana gives judgment-free, safe space. And that's the type of agent that you want, somebody who is going to create a space that is judgment-free and a safe space. But I love that you talked about the social media aspect because so many times, not just in real estate, but in anything, we get the one-size-fits-all advice from people when you really do have to sit down and find that expert to look into your situation specifically. And when it comes to finding agents, I always want to talk about this because, again, that's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yes.
So when you are giving advice on how to find an agent, what are some things that people should look for?
I look for relatability, one, because depending on if this is your first time or if this is your fifth time buying a home, you want an agent who can relate to your experiences. And then I also look at longevity. You'll see there are a lot of licensed realtors in every state. But if you notice, a lot of them are kind of doing real estate and then they're not, and then they're doing it and then they're not, or they're doing it plus 10 other things. I would look at someone who has been consistent, not just in their presence on social media, but also consistent in their business and studying what's going on in the market, what the trends are in the area, and then also someone who you can trust.
Yes.
We've talked about that before, but buying a home and selling a home is a really big thing. It's a big purchase, and sometimes it's the largest amount of money people will see at one time in their lives. And so you want to work with someone who you can trust because because sometimes, things get sticky in a deal, and you want to know that the people on your team are on your team.
Absolutely. And speaking of great real estate agents, tell folks where they can find your information.
Yes, so my website is www.alanaismyrealtor.kw.com. And then, of course, I'm on all the socials at Alana R. Grant.
Absolutely. All right. Well, check out our friend Alana. Also, to make sure that if you are in the home buying process, have a friend who is a family member, to continue to check in on our Real Talk Real Estate series. We are going to put all of this information, this wealth of information, on our website. That's WLTX.com.